Okay, now we're recording. So Liz Rice, are they the one presenting, or is it somebody else from the project?
No. So what happened was over on the TOC, the CNCF TOC, they reviewed a bunch of sandbox projects. The new process has
Right.
them review a list of sandbox projects, and one of them was Open Cruise. And they wanted Kubernetes to look at, should Kubernetes take Open Cruise instead of it becoming a top-level CNCF project? And if so, would it fall under SIG apps?
Right.
And so that's why I asked them to come here today and talk. And then I actually asked Liz what she was looking for out of this. And then that's what I've pasted into the doc from her, is what she said they were kind of interested in doing and what they were thinking.
Okay. Do we have someone from the project on?
Yes, we do. Andy's on.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, cool. Did you want to drive or talk a little bit about Open Cruise?
Yeah, may I share the screen, please? I have a little presentation.
All right, let me see. And
Okay.
I think you need to make him a co-host.
I do.
Yeah.
Okay, you should be able to share your screen now, Andy.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So thank you, Matt, for giving us this introduction. Whoops, where did my screen go? Okay, that's coming. So basically what happens is during that TOC presentation, there are people asking questions, but they were not really familiar with this project. So they would like to have a expert opinions, and of course, the expert is SIG apps on this. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about Open Cruise and the reason why we want to do this, and also the stages where we are at. So to see if it qualifies to be a project standalone, or it should be part of SIG project, or it should be upstream. I don't know. But what I would like to get out of this meeting is to have a verdict on this, like a written testament on this, so we can process forward. So there are a couple of things that Liz was mentioning about this project, and she said it's an experimental project, and it's not. I guess that's missed in our official application. This project came from our production use cases, both inside and outside of Alibaba Cloud. When I say inside, I mean our own e-commerce website. This huge, gigantic cluster is running on Kubernetes, and then there are a couple other businesses that's running on that as well. So it's not experimental anymore. It's really already in production use. And in those environments, people focus more on efficiency and flexibility. They want to have more control over their pods, more control on what they can schedule, and where they can schedule them. So they would like to have more control. So we have those requirements, and we did something. And those features we think can be beneficial to the community, probably not as a generic solution, but more like a special use cases if you have control over your environment, if you would like to have flexibilities and such. So that's really the motivation behind it. So currently Open Cruise has two parts. One part is called Cruise, which is a bunch of controllers managing workloads. And then there will be a new operator framework that's rolling out that's going to manage those controllers. So the operating framework today doesn't it is not fully developed yet. We are still working on the design. of it. We have something already in use, but those are not in the shape in the ready state to be open sourced. But the workload controllers are. So currently we're only talking about those controllers. So we have 5 controllers right now, and one of them, and this is the newest, is called CloneStat. So CloneStat gives more control to users over their pods, mainly on the update strategy.
Excuse me, just
Yes.
a quick question. Are you meaning to go along with the slides? Because it looks like you're talking about what's on slide 4 right now.
What slide 4 is this one, right? Cruise controllers.
Yeah, I'm seeing slide 1 right now.
Oops, sorry.
No, that's okay. That's just the reason I wanted to, because I can't read the little image entirely, and I thought it might help.
I see. Let me exit this. Because I'm using. Can you see now the
Yes,
visual?
yes, we
Okay.
can. Yes, thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. I didn't know that Zoom is not picking up those slides. So okay, so that's the second slide about the motivation, and the third slide about the components. Just talked about these. So currently we have 5 controllers, and the newest one is CloneStat. So CloneStat gives people more controls over what they can do on their pods, mainly on rolling update strategies. And then we have Sidecar Set. Sidecar Set manages sidecars in a centralized place. It's again for those production use cases. And then there was advanced stateful set. So the stateful set was the first, advanced stateful set was the first requirement people gave us, the first requirement. They were saying, okay, we have stateful set, which is cool, but it's slow. So can you do it faster? Can you do it better? So we did some enhancement on the stateful set. So we called that advanced stateful set. And then it slowly progressed into CloneStat, which now manages stateless pods as well. The next one would be United Deployment. So similar to what AWS has on zones, we have these domain concept that you have pods in this area, in those areas. So we want to manage them in the way that is similar to what those AWS workload can do. So we divide them into subsets, basically domains, and then we manage those pods. And the last one is called broadcast jobs. So there are jobs that you want to run on selected nodes, and then you can just dispatch them, and they are going to run simultaneously in parallel. So these are the controllers that we have. So I think one of the biggest question people have is, okay, what's the relationship between these controllers to what we have upstream? So first of all, I think the name is confusing. There are like advanced stateful set. We are doing some other similar names. And people would assume that we're forking upstream code, but these are not forked code. We have them rewritten from scratch. So these are not forked code. And in terms of features, they are complementing what the generic workload controllers can do. We are not, we don't want to overtake or take over what the generic workloads can do. These are enhancements for specific use cases. So talking about specific use cases, I'm going to use CloneStat as an example since it's the newest. And by the way, this one is still being actively developed. All the others are not at this moment. We have a couple new controllers coming as well. So CloneStat focuses on update strategies. It gives you the freedom to mix and match all these strategies. So you can do, for example, in-place update, which is really efficient if you have a large number of pods and you want to do updates on them. And in-place update would not bother with API servers. It's going to just pull the new image out of the repo and update them. So what you get is you will keep your pod ID as the UUID of it. You will keep the IP address. You will keep your PVC. You will keep all the things that you place on the pod, so it doesn't bother with API server. But of course, the downside of it is you need to be in control of. You need to know what you're doing, because otherwise, let's say you have a spec that says pod one has like 1 gig of memory, and suddenly you put a huge image that's 2 gig of memory, you're causing trouble. So you need to know, like in a fine controlled environment, definitely this is an efficient way to do things, but again, you need to be in control of this. Partition is another thing, so you can say, I want version 1 to have this. So it's something we already have in other controllers, but we're just putting them together. Right, so we also have some our own invented strategies like pause. Pause means you're not updating this pod anymore. So even if you have a new version, it's not going to get put into your pod. So these are the fine-tuned knobs that we have, and also like in-place update strategy has a grace period. So you just in case that you want to do something and you have a grace period. So comparing to what we have from upstream, we have deployment, stateful set, daemon set. So clone set has a lot more capabilities in terms of update strategies. And some of them came from, like partition came from stateful set, but we're doing it anyways. And also, unlike stateful set, it's not linear. So when you're updating, you're doing it in parallel. So clone set is really powerful, but again, you need to know what you're doing. Otherwise, it's going to cause trouble. So another project, another controller we have is called sidecar set. Sidecar set manages your sidecars. Let's say you have a Fluentd sidecar that's collecting your metrics, and then you can have a sidecar set that's going to be looking over all those sidecars, and it's going to manage those sidecars for you, so you don't have to worry about it. And so when you, for example, we use clone set here, but let's say you have a deployment, and all you have to do is give that label selector to the clone car set, and it's going to inject those sidecars for you. So you don't have to do anything in your deployment or in your clone set workload description. Sidecar set can do it for you. So it's decoupled from your workload definition. So these are the simple things that,
I have a question.
Yes.
For sidecar set. So is it aware of the life cycle of the pod that's injecting to? So like one of the limitations that we have today using mutated emission control in order to inject sidecar proxies for Istio or Linker D, for example, is that the templates that it uses to perform injection don't respect whether the workload is run to completion or restart always, right? So like when you inject sidecars, you're always going to end up most of the time, actually in both of the use cases I just mentioned, with a run to restart always pod, which when you inject that into a batch workload, obviously causes problems. So does sidecar set alleviate that in any way, or is it still kind of limited by that constraint?
That particular problem, I think I've heard of, I think a couple of weeks ago, I heard of issue that's talking about this. I think right now the intention is, yes, we want to do it, but I'm not sure if we are able to do it. but definitely that's one of the reasons why we want to do this. So sidecar set is going to take care of these situations and not leaving it to other controllers or hooks to deal with it. So. Hello? Oops.
Yeah, we still hear you, Wendy. I think you can just continue with the slides.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
fair.
sorry. I thought I lost
You didn't lose us.
connection.
We're
Yeah, this morning it's really bad. So yeah, so that's pretty much I have for these controllers, because the other three are less used, and also they are not really feature rich. They just do one thing and one thing only. For example, advanced stateful set mainly takes care of the in-place update, and then unified deployment is used when you have multi-zones, but you need to somehow be able to define those subset first. And broadcast job is also something that people use it, but it's really straightforward to use. So I think these are less, I would say, controversial, but yes, clone set is most feature rich and sidecar set is kind of unique. So that's why I picked these two to present. So hopefully that gives you the overview of what we have on cruise controllers. And yeah, so these things were not, I think, especially the name, were having issues with the TOC members because they see advanced stateful set, and others probably they're thinking there's some correlation between us and the upstream. So, but that's a good way to think of it. So we would like to get your opinions on this.
Well, I think one thing. So did you want to like make Open Cruise a SIG sponsored project? Was that the objective?
Well, it's one of the possibilities. If it's a SIG sponsor, that it can be part of upstream, or it should be a standalone CNCF project. We just want to decide the fate of it and find the exit of this project.
So in doing a review of some of the features that you mentioned, well, not that you mentioned here, but some of the features that are available, for instance, in advanced stateful set, like the max unavailable, for instance, right? That's actually open work in upstream to present a feature like that. So I think if you look historically, like deployment, for instance, it really comes from deployment config from OpenShift, right? So OpenShift was very much, or is very much, a place where functionality gets developed in the open source for that specific platform, and then as it gets broad adoption and gets borne out, gets taken back into the upstream. At least that traditionally has been the case. I think from the SIG architecture perspective, they very much want, so I mean, you have a bunch of custom resource definitions, right? And the difference between a custom resource definition and a built-in type is right now one of them ships on by default and it's built into the code base. And there's some technical differences there from an implementation perspective as well. But the vision for SIG architecture is that there really shouldn't be, in the long term, a difference between a custom resource definition and a built-in type. There should just be a resource definition. So I think doing it outside of tree and keeping it outside of tree makes sense to me. And then where there are features that we think are more broadly usable and should be adopted into, for instance, like if you wanted to upstream advanced stateful sets features into stateful set, I don't think we would, I don't think anyone's going to push back on that as long as we think that they're mature and broadly useful and not like tied to a very specific use case for like one or two people, right? But developing it in the open source, I think, has some benefits and some cost. Developing it as CRDs as opposed to trying to upstream the entire thing as a built-in would allow you to experiment more and move faster, I would say as well. That would be another trade-off concern, because once it's a built-in type, so anything we do at this point to the workloads API where it's at V1 has to be at a level of maturity and stability that effectively means we're not breaking anybody, it's fully backward compatible, and it's a long-term feature that we're going for. The benefit to kind of having a project that's outside of that scope, it'll let you evolve the APIs in a way that makes sense and experiment and kind of find all of the sweet spots that you're trying to hit. So, I mean, like, I don't know if those paths are actually mutually exclusive. Like, I don't think you have to upstream the entire thing and try to put it all into the core controllers, because I don't, that would be difficult, and not, we can discuss it. If you wanted to offer it as a SIG sponsored project, we can discuss that. And, you know, that allows you to kind of both be under Kubernetes governance, if that's what you're looking for, or at least have a governance model around the open source project, as well as being able to kind of move fast and at your own pace. And it doesn't preclude you from offering upstream contributions to the core controllers when they've reached a level of maturity that the entire community is comfortable with.
Yeah, I have to say I totally agree with you. So first of all, we even though these controllers are already in use, they're still at least the two of them are in active development, and we still have bugs on that issues as well. And we do want to move faster on this. And the second part is, yes, those controllers can be separated, and even the features can be separated. We do plan to upstream some of the features, like you said, in stateful, advanced stateful set, because it has been tested, it has been used for a long time, and the changes are not that big, and it's already there. For example, the max unusable that you were saying, those features we do want to upstream if possible. And yeah, so I totally agree with your assessment.
Yeah, I also agree that actually developing this outside of Kubernetes and bringing a specific feature back to the core, that makes most sense to me, because you will be able to move freely forward. You are also like, your resources are V1 Alpha 1, if I'm looking correctly. So that will give you time to mature. And I think bringing back specific features or discussing proposals, that makes sense to me. But just bringing everything in, it will be difficult, as Ken said. And I don't think we should kind of support only one project, because I bet there are others, right? So I just wouldn't want SIG apps to back just one, right? Maybe we can find a platform for all of them, or just developing out the tree.
Mm-hmm.
Go for it, man. Sorry.
I was just going to ask the whole question, and this is what the TOC was looking for. Is this something that's desired to be inside of Kubernetes, or should, as a project, it be something separate from the Kubernetes project? I think the TOC is actually looking for some kind of direction on that.
I think they are looking for the technical assessment on the SIG to decide if it fits in better. Because for us, we propose this as a separate project. We have those concerns just mentioned. So we do want to move faster. We do want to grow for a while before we see the next steps, because Sandbox is just the entry point. So maybe after a year or so, we can decide whether we want to upstream them or we want to stay as a separate project for a better case. Yeah.
Yeah, and specifically, I mean, Liz asked if this is something that should be in core Kubernetes as a project, like under the Kubernetes project, or if it should be standalone. That's one of her direct asks of the Kubernetes project.
Yeah, so for us, like we said, our intention is to stay as a CNCF project if possible. But if you guys see it has close ties or it's better to be part of the big family of Kubernetes, we're happy to oblige as well.
Would you want to be under, if you had your choice, would you want it to be a standalone sandbox project or a Kubernetes SIG sponsored project?
Well, given this, given the choice, we would want to stay as a CNCF sandbox project.
Okay.
I definitely have no objection to that. Does anyone else have an objection to that?
I think it makes more sense, right? Because if you were to become SIG sponsored project, like I think that would imply some review time from us, right? And so probably it would be kind of, well, you wouldn't develop as fast as you could on your own, I think. And we would have to sort out what to do with the other projects as well.
I agree with that, and I would say this though: if the only benefit I can see to becoming a SIG sponsored project is if you want to run open crews like an incubator, right? Like if you're looking for it to specifically develop workloads APIs with the intention of upstreaming them eventually, and that's the entire zone you live in, or with the potential to upstream individual features from them eventually, right? So if you're looking at it like this project is about building workloads, extensions, APIs, and custom controllers. And we really want to grow that, and we want to kind of grow that community. Doing that inside of SIG apps might be helpful, right? Like it kind of brings a focus of the community onto that particular surface. And when people want to do things, because we get a lot of requests to do things that we probably won't do inside of the built-in types. But as another project, it would give us a clear direction to like send contributors who are looking to build those type of things directly to open crews and say, well, here's a place where you can go build those type of things as an experiment and do them as an incubator. And you know, if those features work out there, if they become so prevalent that we want to adopt them into the built-in types, there's a clear path to do that, and we could build that clear path out. And I don't necessarily think that we can still do that type of collaboration even if you're a top-level CNCF project. That's not a problem. But it might be, in terms of reducing confusion in the community, that might provide a little bit more clarity. And that would be the only thing I would say would weigh towards it. But I mean, really, like it's really, you know, how you want to manage your contributions and what type of governance you want to put around your project.
Right. So currently we are following the CNCF open governance policies, and of course, being part of the SIG family would give us more attentions from the community. But also, as you mentioned earlier, probably it's going to be slower in iterations. So that's something we are kind of hesitant on, honestly. So really, I agree that it might be able to fit. So what we want to do is try to upstream part of the features and see where they fit and how well they're accepted in the community, and then decide whether it should eventually become part of the upstream of building resources instead of a standalone project. Does that make sense?
Yes, I'm, unless anyone objects, I think we're kind of aligned that whichever way you want to go, we'll support you.
Yeah.
Great.
And also, if you become the top level project, I think it's reasonable for us to collaborate on specific features that you want to bring back, right? That doesn't mean we give up on you.
Exactly. So okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go through some features and then maybe send an email to your group, SIG email, and then say let you guys decide if that makes sense to upstream those features. And meanwhile, I would like to get maybe an email from Ken or Matt on the decisions about the whole project, where it should be staying in CNCF. So it clarifies, I think, for the TOC members, because they don't have that time or expertise to look into those details. So if we can just do those things, it would be great.
Yeah, I can take the action to follow up since I'm the one who asked the clarifying questions of the TOC. I'll just continue where I left off with our follow-up from this call. I do have one other question though. That's not specific necessarily to Open Cruise, but it gets to kind of our opinion here. They had this kind of additional question. It said if the Kubernetes project would actually prefer these experiments to take place in a separate project, does that make Open Cruise the natural home for all workload related CRD ideas or some other scope? Now, my first take on it is there is no natural home for all the things. My gut reaction is that's almost like a business manager saying, let's have a department that comes up with all these things and we manage them all under there. But we're open source communities and that doesn't, I don't think it fits. But I wanted to hear what others had to say. So when I respond to that.
So, I mean, like that would be like saying that we would give preference to contributions there over OpenShift, for instance, which is a top level project and which, you know, they do a lot of workload development. On top of that, you have the workloads controllers that are developed in the open source by Pinterest. You have, I mean, I can think of at least 4 or 5 projects off of the bat that do this type of work. You can't just say that it should all go here. Like anybody should be free to submit open and competing. Like if somebody wants to do Open Cruise, like basically a compete to it, like a complete rewrite of that, that's their free will, right? That's their right. And we shouldn't like force them into a specific project just because it's themed a certain way. That would be my opinion.
I agree. There shouldn't be just one distro.
Okay. That's where I was at, and I was very surprised the question was answered, but I wanted to make sure it was asked here. All right, I can respond to it. Thank you all.
So what does it take for a project like OpenCruise to be be part of a sandbox project in CNCF? Are we saying it is now part of it, or is there like some requirements they have to fulfill, or what does it take?
There is a requirements list for becoming a CNCF sandbox project. I can link it out later, but it's not, I mean, it's not super hard to get over that hump, but it's not trivial either. So, you know, sandbox is below incubating. Incubating is below, I think, other than Kubernetes and Helm, what's gone top level that's gone like highest GA or whatever we call it?
There's a bunch of Prometheus, I think Linkerd. There's like up to a dozen graduated projects now. But Sandbox runs a different process. There's a list of criteria you have to meet. And then every quarter, the TOC gets together and analyzes all of the proposed projects. Last time there were less than 10, I think. And they go through an analysis of the different projects and decide whether it's in or out. A bunch of them, they approved this last time. Open Cruise was one of them they kicked out for more questions and information before they would make a decision. I don't know whether they'll wait till their next time because they do it quarterly, or whether they would do it out of the loop. Because this is a whole new process for them that this is only their second pass through doing sandbox projects this way.
Okay, sounds good.
If you go to the github.com/cncf/TOC, the process and all the requirements are documented there.
Cool, thanks.
You're welcome. All right, Ken, are we done with this topic and we can move on to the next two?
We can, unless somebody else has, anyone else has something to add. Okay, so cron job to GA review.
Hi, this is Maciej. So basically, I cleaned a little bit the cron job proposal from Barney. It hasn't changed that much. I just moved several pieces that we discussed over the past couple of meetings over to the future development, and not necessarily as a gating part for the GA. But most of them are cosmetical, I would say. Trying to minimize the scope of this work so that we can actually focus on the controller and without changing that much the API, as we discussed, land the controller most probably over the next 3 releases, because we discussed that we will do the alpha controller in the current release. The next one will be a beta, and probably around beta we would also GA the API so that we can we are able to provide people with just one single update from beta to GA instead of requiring them to jump from beta to beta 2 and then only to GA. And then finally in 122, if all goes well, we will be able to remove the old controller. This is more about bringing awareness to the people and so that they can have a look at it.
Cool. Anyone have any discussion on this?
I
Okay.
have not been following this closely, but I thought cron job was being rewritten as a controller to align with the other controllers. Is that already done?
No, that's part of this.
I see.
That's part of the proposal. The PR actually that is writing the new controller, because there's some time ago we decided that we will not be rewriting, but rather we will introduce a new controller, given that rewriting basically means we need to write a new one from scratch.
Yeah.
And so that we can ensure that there is a smooth process to migrate from one to the other, we decided to write a new controller, and we will be gradually replacing the old one with the new one over the next 3 releases.
Yeah. So, in terms of like the changes between this and the original PR from Barney, it basically just downscopes a lot of it. Like the settled stuff is out. There's a bunch of things that were in there that weren't necessarily critical to going GA. So this is a much kind of leaner, thinner path forward that gets us to a GA, a viable GA faster, was the way I would phrase it.
Yeah, that is correct.
Got it. Thanks.
But it's worth reviewing and worth looking at the differences. But I mean, I read it over the weekend, and like without giving very deep thought to it, it seems to cover all the questions to me. So, but other people should take a look at it too.
Yeah, basically, Barney did a lot of the initial work, and I just ensured that when we actually have the time to address, it's within the scope. And it is obviously not blocking any of the further changes. I'm just making sure that we can promote safely this to GA in a reasonable time frame, rather than being faced with additional hurdles if we would have to go through V1 beta 1, V1 beta 2 cron jobs, and so forth. Also, we own this to the community because we kept the cron jobs in beta for a good couple of years already.
It seems you're muted.
Sorry. Was there anything that anyone wanted to add to this conversation? Okay. So it seems like the last one is Mayang's PR. Looks like Janet is currently assigned. Do you need approval or do you need?
I think the API is reviewed by Jordan and that is approved. It looks like based on the last comment. I think I need to look. I need someone to look at the implementation and the tests I've added, and then if that is looking in the right direction, then I can proceed with trying to find an end-to-end test.
Okay. So looking it over, like I didn't do I did not do a code review. I did basically an approval review of it, and it looks like it's the right direction. But if you're looking for something a bit more in depth, if Janet can't take it because she's assigned to it, I can. So
yeah, I think either of you. I think a more like a code level review would help a lot. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I will have a look as well because I'm fixing update for stateful set 2, so I was there lately.
Okay. Okay, sounds good.
And do we need to assign this to the milestone?
To who?
Milestone, like do one of you needs to assign this to the 121, I think, or 120? 120, I think.
120 would be.
That should go away, right?
Yeah.
I thought it's there just temporarily to merge only important fixes to stabilize the queue, and then it should go away, and then it should be introduced after feature freeze, right?
It was actually temporarily, but they extended the period for a little bit. There was some discussion last week on the SIG leads for extending this for the entire 120 release, but the majority of the people said that it won't be viable. So currently, if I remember correctly, there's a PR from Stephen Augustus that is meant to be merged today-ish, probably around US Western times, more likely. So hopefully within tomorrow at latest, all of the PRs that are tagged should merge.
So does that mean that until that merges, new features cannot go to 120, right? Is that
that was basically the idea, to ensure that we only merge flake fixes and bugs and try to slow down the future development to ensure, because there was a lot of friction around 119 closures,
right?
With CI being super flaky, and the SIG release was fighting with the CI heavily to get a proper signal how good or bad the 119 release is.
Right. And does that directly imply that the milestone can only be put when that PR merges, right?
Yeah, but that was, like I said, it should be dropped later today.
Got it. Okay.
You did again. Does anyone have any other topics they want to bring up? Okay. Anything urgent? Any other urgent PRs? Urgently need review? Then we'll give you guys back 10 minutes. Thanks for attending and participating and contributing. And see you next time.
Thank you all. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.